I think of critical points when you look back to 3 years ago. I think the most critical point in the beginning was actually formalizing a vision about what it was we wanted to do. And as Tim and I are very visionary and we kind of can see things, we needed to build prototypes so we could show it to other people. And the things we wanted to combine, as I mentioned, was the internet. And we wanted to combine this with how can Africa change its position from being a very poor continent to being a prosperous continent? How can we take poverty and eradicate it? And at the same time, how can we do business? So we kind of had, like, you can call it the triple bottom line. We were concerned about the poverty, we were concerned about technology, and we were concerned about business. And these three things we put into an opportunity and say, we would like to create a company which can do massive change to be an instrument for others to use this. And so that was kind of the first formalization. And to do it, we actually engaged. We never really saw critical factors on this, but when you look back, I think that the journey we followed was very interesting, because what we did was we said we don't have all these answers. We have formalized a vision, an idea, we know what we would like to do, and we have an idea about how it should look. So what we did was actually inspired by Lord of the Rings. And that when Lord of the Rings was going out to find out how should Frodo look, they asked a lot of students on the web. And they sent them drawings and pictures of different actors put in different disguises and say, is this Frodo? And we did the same. We went around with our little prototype drawing and we showed it to a lot of different people in Africa, in Denmark, in America, and we interviewed them and we explained the story to them. And some said, this sounds like a good idea, and others said, I don't have a clue about what it is you're talking about. And we then took that part of information and we went into the drawing board and back to our business plan, and we start revising it. And we did that, if we look back, we did this in 2005. After half a year work, we had the first prototype. We then, half a year later, got the second prototype. And half a year later, again, we got the third prototype. And from the third prototype, we actually had something which was so concrete that we had the business idea for what we should do. But in each of these phases, we actually thought that we were ready to launch a business. Now we're ready. But then when we went out and actually made a diligence interviewing people, we found out we were not ready at all. So there was this incubation time where it took us to simply test our idea, and it still had the same DNA in the idea, but it got more and more concrete and it got more and more simple. When we talk about prototype, one of the things which I think is very important in leadership is if you can't draw it, you can't build it. So the tool we used here is actually inspired by a professor called Max Boissot, and he has made a model where if you have an idea and you kind of look at this idea and it's very undescribed, then that is innovation and entrepreneurship. So we started describing our idea, and the more we described it, we come down to the other area where it's not coded. And then we started building prototypes. We coded it. We put it together, the idea we had. And an ultimated coded product is, of course, take iPod and iTunes. You go on the web, and you can go in and you can buy the music, and you can carry it with you anywhere and play it anytime you can. So we followed this model of Max Boissot, which is about entrepreneurship and about management of a product, and we put leadership in the center of that. And we used this model to be in the loop, and we were constantly in the loop of describing and prototyping, because we were moving towards something which got better and better. And then when we had described about 5 prototypes, which were simply not programmed, but actually made on paper, how did we want it to work and flow, we showed it to a web designer, and we said to him, could you make the graphic pages for this without programming it? Just make, like, sophisticated PowerPoints. Just make the graphic pages on this, make these 5 pages. And then we got these 5 pages made, and we went out again and started showing them to the people we were interviewing. Some of them we had now known more, and they were good and strong opponents, and now they started to understand it. And then we showed it to a programmer and said, we would like these revisions, but do you understand what it is we'd like to build? And there was a Danish company called Proactive, still is, and one of the owners of the company called Claus Topholt, he looked at Tim and me and he said, I know what you want to build, I can make it. When you look at MYC4 as a product, you always put yourself in the chair and say, who's the customer? And the complex thing with MYC4 is that we have many customers, we have many stakeholders. But let me just start describing the one which is the reason why we made it. It's the African entrepreneur. So what we wanted to make is services for that entrepreneur which will have a value for them to be able to grow their business. Now, in Africa, if you don't have a social security number, you cannot get a bank account. If you have a social security number and you have a bank account, you cannot get a loan without making a deposit. Now, we built into the model that you can get a loan on MYC4 without a social security number, without a bank account, and without a deposit. At the same time, the interest should not be higher than you can repay that out of what you have said you want to grow your business with the loan you get. So it's not a consumption loan, it's a loan to grow your business. So you need to be able to articulate that. And the interest must not be higher, but at the same time, there should be an upside for the business. Like on eBay, you have an upside if you're selling a watch that somebody buys more than you expect, and the seller then gets happy, and the buyer also might be happy because they might think this is a fantastic deal. In the same way, on MYC4, the borrower is having an upside that the interest can be lower, never higher, because then they won't get the loan, because it will not be sustainable, but it can be lower. So this was the first product. It was describing this scene from African perspective. Then we went over to the other side, and we said, how can we make it interesting for you to be the investor on this? And we were very inspired with this, that they could pay back as much as they wanted without a penalty. So the only way we could get it for the investors, to be fair, is that they didn't cost anything to use MYC4. So we said, we want to make this disruptive. No excuse not to invest in these businesses over here. Fee zero. It is the borrower who pays. That's why there's an interest. The borrower also pays the investor's risk. So we put it over here that the investor has all the risk on the currency, they have all the risk on default on the loans, which happens here, and the investor pays no fee. So these two products is what we kind of have been working with.